How's it going?
How are you, man?
It's going good. How about you guys?
Hanging in there. Hanging in
Lovely
there.
day.
What you pouring yourself?
There you go. The 92 proof bourbon, and I'm just kind of setting up everything here. I try to, not sure what all we're tasting, but I try to taste along with you. I don't like people to drink alone. So,
Very hospitable.
Awesome.
That mouse.
Oh, here, yeah. Let me move that over.
I think we have the straight rye. Then we have the original Alabama style, and we have the 92 proof.
Perfect.
And then we also,
We happen to have some just ourselves as well. So.
yeah. Matt and I are. I'm Anthony, by the
Yeah,
way.
very nice. Yeah,
Yep.
Hey, I'm Troy.
I'm Matt.
Troy, Matt, got it.
Yeah, pleasure, man.
Nice to meet you guys.
You too.
I'm LC, and I appreciate you guys having me.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you being on here, man. Appreciate you being on. Yeah. Well, thanks for sending over some bottles too for us to try. Appreciate that.
No problem. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, typically, and I have to ask you, have you ever listened to our podcast?
Normally, when I get approached about a podcast, I'll go and listen to a few episodes just to familiarize myself with kind of the format and stuff. So
Okay.
I did that right when we got our first initial email, whenever day that was, a
Sure.
week or so, however long ago that was. So yes, I've listened to a few episodes.
Okay. So you're familiar with our terrible ranking system on how we judge things as stinker drinkers or thinkers?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, geez. All right.
Well, at least we're going to be honest with you, you know. I'll tell
That's
you,
fine.
I've tried this one, the Special Reserve 6-year.
Yeah.
We actually all tried that the other day for the first time. It was actually awesome. So I'm excited to try the rest of them here, but
No, so I bought that 15-year a couple weeks back and actually have not opened it yet. So
It's good juice as well. Very good juice.
yeah, cool. All right, man. Well, yeah. How did you? I guess you're the third generation.
Yeah. So my grandfather is Clyde May. I'm technically, so LC stands for Lewis Clyde May. He was Lewis Clyde May. I'm Lewis Clyde May. However, I'm the only other Lewis Clyde May. He didn't name any sons that. So I'm not junior because I'm not his direct son, but because I'm his grandson and I share his name. Lewis Clyde May the second. It's a little confusing, but
Sure.
but I just go by my initials, LC. So
I got you. Okay. Yeah. So he started as your grandfather. He started as a moonshiner.
Correct. That's all he ever was a moonshiner. He never started this brand legally. This was started about 10 years after he died.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Was it started by your father or you?
My uncle, Kenny May. Yes.
Your uncle. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's awesome. Were you around it much as a kid?
Yeah, I've been around it both legally and illegally my entire life. When Clyde May died in 1990, my dad, who was the youngest of the 8 children, he took over his illegal moonshine operation. He made moonshine for many, many years, even up when my uncle Kenny May, when he started the brand legally, for a long time, not that we didn't have faith in it, but we didn't really know what was going to happen with it. We didn't know if it was going to take off or not. So my dad was still making whiskey illegally, even when this brand was legalized.
Oh, wow.
So I've been around it growing up. I was, grew up in the middle of nowhere out in Southeast Alabama and used to go to the still with my dad and help him out there and do that. And now we just, do it all legally. We're building a new distillery here in Troy, and I plan to eventually become the master distiller at that facility.
That's awesome.
How big of a
Once it's up
facility are
and
you building?
running. So, it's a $20 million facility. So we're going to have a distillery, bottling facility, rick house, museum, gift shop, tasting room, cabins you can stay in, restaurant. Basically, something like you'd see on the Bourbon Trail, just in Southeast Alabama instead.
Wow.
I'm sure that's going to be the biggest distillery by far down there, I'd imagine.
In Alabama, yeah, without question. Right now, one of the larger distilleries right now, it's not even doing bourbon or anything. It's doing vodka and gin and things like that. So,
Yeah.
and there is a fairly decent sized whiskey slash bourbon distillery in Birmingham. They haven't released really any of their own distillate yet. They're just kind of blending it there right now, but
Sure.
it's decent size. But ours is on 80 acres of land
Oh, wow.
down in Troy, Alabama. So it'll probably be 5 or 6 times larger than the next largest one in the state of Alabama. So
Wow. And when is that getting finished up? Or when do you think it's be done by?
we're building it in phases. So phase one will be early April, mid-April of 2023. And then so phase one is the actual um like the actual distilling stuff, the distillery itself, the bottling facility, the things we actually need to make whiskey. Phase two and three is more of the tourism stuff, like the museum, gift shop, tasting room, things of that nature.
That's awesome. And with your ambitions, obviously, to be a master distiller there, I'm assuming the stuff that we have here and what you're putting into bottles now is stuff you're sourcing, I'd imagine.
Correct. Yeah, the current stuff. Well, depending on what you're drinking, there, everything on that table is MGP except for that 15-year-old. It's not MG. That's a Kentucky juice. That 15-year-old.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
wow. Okay.
But
Okay.
Very cool.
but we were back in 2001 is when my uncle Kenny May started this brand legally, and I'll dive into my grandfather's aged whiskey recipe and stuff like that in a minute. But when he started this legally, it was still illegal to distill spirits in the state of Alabama. There were no legal distilleries making any kind of spirit in the state of Alabama back in 2001. That didn't change. The first licensed distillery that was making any type of spirit was built in 2014. So for the first 13 years of our legal existence, we cannot legally make it in the state of Alabama. So we were sourcing back before people even knew what sourcing was.
Oh, wow.
I mean, back in 2001, 2002, you could look somebody in the eye and say, yeah, we contract distill or whatever, and they'd be like, I don't know what that means. They had no idea. But now, because of the bourbon boom and all of the new brands out there, people have educated themselves and they know now what sourcing means or what contract means. But for most of our legal existence, we were kind of doing something before it was cool, so to speak.
Yeah,
so
sure.
because of that, our a lot of our products, the Alabama style is our recipe. It's a unique finish, but the 92 proof bourbon is a proprietary blend that MGP only does for us, and they don't do it for any other brand, not even their own brands. So, we have a lot of access to barrels and things that we have that others don't, because we're just kind of ahead of the curve a little bit.
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
we've been doing it for so long. Yeah.
Sure. How involved are you with the sourcing process? And my biggest question, I think, is once you guys start, that distillery opens and you start putting your own juice in your own bottle, probably after, I'd imagine, at least maybe a 2-year rye first, but maybe around 4 years or so before you get your own bourbon in there. But how do you, when you're picking stuff now, when you're sourcing stuff, like how do you envision that translating to what ultimately you want to do as a master distiller when you start releasing your own juice, essentially?
Right. Right now we do whatever it takes to produce a quality product, with the blends, with the proofs, with chill filter versus non-chill filter, everything like that. That same type of process will continue in Alabama. Whatever we produce or put my grandfather's name on and essentially my name on, it has to meet our standards. So whatever we got to do to get it to that point, obviously, I think it goes without saying that the juice that we produce in Southeast Alabama will not be exactly like the juice that's being produced in Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
Yeah, sure.
So what we plan to do, obviously but there's also going to be similarities, in terms of quality. And we have a certain taste profile that we look for when we produce any product, regardless. So, we're just going to do whatever it takes to get it to that point. Obviously, it'll probably involve temperature control in the rick house, involve, tweaking the mash bill, how often we rotate the barrels as they're aging, things like that.
Yeah. Are you going to create a different
it's
line?
going to kind of be, what's that?
Are you going to create like a different line of product then? Or are you going to leave this as it is and still source stuff? Or are you going to totally go into eventually?
Yeah. So this will, when we build the distillery, we'll be continuing to source from MGP until we have our own distillate ready. Eventually it'll get to the point to where we slowly get out of MGP completely, and everything we have is ours, out of Alabama. I mean, but right away, immediately once phase one is complete, we will begin bottling in Alabama. That's something a lot of people, especially companies like ours, that's a little bit smaller. One of your biggest costs in this whole deal is the bottling. So people are like, wow, you're actually going to truck barrels from Indiana to Alabama just to bottle, isn't that kind of expensive? And it's like, yes, it's expensive, but it's actually still cheaper than bottling it there.
Oh, wow.
Once you have your own facility, it's a completely different ball game. So we'll begin bottling immediately in Alabama. So it'll say bottled in Alabama. And then we're actually going to take some of the younger barrels that we had laid down in Indiana, and we're going to experiment and let them finish aging in Alabama. So that way we'll release a product eventually that'll say aged and bottled in Alabama.
That's awesome.
Sure.
And then shortly after that, it'll be distilled, aged, and bottled in Alabama.
Sure.
That's really cool.
What do you think the evaporation process or the aging process is going to be like in Alabama versus the MGP stuff that you get out in Indiana and such?
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of goes back to what I was saying about, just having myself and a good committee of people that, is going to be on the floor tasting these barrels, making sure we keep a consistent taste profile. But obviously it goes without saying, it gets a hell of a lot hotter in Troy, Alabama than it does Lawrenceburg, Indiana. I think I think that's a no-brainer. But part of what we are going to do is, and this is something, it's not really advertised as much because it's not as, romantic and kind of follows along with that true bourbon tradition. But we will be using some temperature control in our rick house, not 24/7, only whenever it's abnormally hot or even if it gets abnormally cold, to help kind of curb some of that evaporation process and behavior to try to help keep up with our consistent flavor profile.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of consistent flavor profile, why don't we
pour the 92?
Yeah.
Troy?
LC, which one would you have us taste first?
It's if you were to ask someone, you might get 10 different answers. I normally taste in order of proof. That way I'm not jumping from a high proof to the Alabama style. It's the lowest proof. It's 85 proof. However, too, it depends too what you're tasting. I would probably taste the rye last, just because obviously it's going to taste the most different from the mash point of view and the so no matter what proof order, like if you're planning on tasting that 110, even though it's higher proof than the rye, I would still save the rye for last.
Okay.
Just because of it being different.
So what is Alabama style exactly?
Yeah, so this is kind of what started it all. We call this the original recipe because when we started this brand, or when my uncle started this brand back in the early 2000s, this is the only product we had in our portfolio. It wasn't until many, many years later we even introduced a second product in our portfolio. So what Alabama style means, my grandfather, a majority of what Clyde May sold was unaged White Lightning moonshine. However, sometime around the mid-1950s, he decided he knew a gentleman that was able to get him a charred oak barrel, and it wasn't an orphan barrel. It was a true and blue 53-gallon charred oak barrel. And he decided to experiment with aging some of his moonshine into whiskey. And now he didn't have the luxury of aging it for as long as we do today. because he was doing it illegally. So anytime you're aging this, you're sitting on 53 gallons of evidence, all the time.
Yeah.
So you have to be
Gotta
careful
move
on,
quick.
on what you're doing. So he was lucky if he could age it for essentially a year. He was aging it basically 1 year at a time. And when he first tasted his very first aged batch, he didn't like it. It didn't have it just needed more age to it, but he didn't have the time to get that age. So he started experimenting with different finishes to try to help soften the blow a little bit. Now, I think it's important to note he was anti-flavoring because he was a believer you can make bad whiskey and then over flavor it and disguise that bad whiskey. If
Sure.
you make good whiskey, there's no need to over flavor it. But he did think that you could finish it with some sort of flavoring just to soften it up a little bit. So through this trial and error process, he tried many different things. He discovered that adding oven dried apple slices to the barrel at the very end of the aging process, not like I said, not to flavor it, but to finish it, would do just enough to give it that smooth finish he was looking for. So what Alabama style means, any bottle that has the words Alabama style on it means it's finished with a hint of apple. Now today, part of the reason he was also doing oven dried apple slices is because that charred brown apple slice would also assist in the color, help make it look a little bit more appealing. And in fact, I know only you guys can see it. This will be something only people can hear, but for your visual purposes. So let's see. Give me one moment.
Yeah.
So I have the last 2 batches of aged whiskey that he ever made.
Oh,
before he
wow.
died.
That's awesome.
That is great.
So this is what it would look like after he added that hint of oven dried apple. This is, and if you look at it, you would think, oh, wow, that's been in the barrel 3 or 4 years. This was in the barrel for a year,
Wow,
so that he would do what he had to do to kind of assist with that color. And it just so happens I have a batch of aged whiskey that he never added the hints of apple to, so I can do a comparison. This is what it looked like when it didn't have the hints of apple. Almost looks
wow.
like
It's a young
urine.
Scotch.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did he try?
So he did it for 2 reasons. He did it for the finish to make it smoother, but he also did it for the feel and the look of it as well. Give me one. I want to put these up because I don't want to leave them on my floor here. These are irreplaceable.
Yes, they are.
So today, obviously, we don't have that aging issue. So we don't need to kind of artificial color anything or anything like that. So we replicate that same finish. When Kenny May, my uncle, started this whole process, obviously he had batches of my grandfather's and he was trying to taste compare. And basically now and when I say a subtle hint, I mean, this is very, very subtle hint. The hint of apple, it's natural apple extract. It's a combination that we create that replicates the finish of my grandfather. It makes up 0.003% of the blend.
Wow.
So up until we add that, it's a straight bourbon, what you're tasting right now. But we can't call it that until we add that hint of. But because it's so subtle, if you got a really good nose and you're looking for it, you can probably taste that subtle hint of apple. But in reality, most of the dominant flavors you'll pick up are not added flavors. It's just the natural flavors you get from the barrel, just like you'll get on any other bourbon.
Sure.
And what's the mash bill of this?
So this one is 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley, which is kind of a regular MGP mash bill on this particular product. But like I said, this is our unique finish as well. It's 85 proof. It's a blend of 4 and 5 year old straight bourbons, and then it has that Alabama style finish.
It's really nice.
I think it's delicious, honestly. You definitely get some of the barrel, some of that oak in there. It is fruitier than I would imagine too. I definitely get like more Troy on it, and I don't know,
like a little hot honey almost.
Yeah, exactly. A little sweetness and maybe like some just a little bit of like cherry, but you keep saying apple and I keep maybe tasting apple, and maybe that's
The
what
power
it
of
is.
suggestion.
Whenever, so I'm the national brand ambassador. I go all over the country. I do in-store tastings or bourbon dinners or whatever, and I do my very best when I'm tasting this product out to have the consumer taste it first.
Sure.
Before I tell them about that hint of apple. And that's true with anything. I've done in-store tastings where two brothers walk into the liquor store and they taste the 92 proof bourbon. And the first brother, he sips it before the other brother has a chance. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm getting a note of vanilla and brown sugar. And then the other brother tastes it and goes, I am too.
That's like exactly what we do with this podcast.
Brain,
You just described our entire podcast.
So it's so I try my best, but in cases like this, when I know for a fact that the people I'm talking to are experienced bourbon consumers, I don't mind telling them before. It's more the new consumer. I try to tell them before they taste it because I don't want to plant it in their brain.
Right.
Sure. Not as experienced. But yeah, it's just that little hint of apple.
So it sounds like there's some camaraderie in Alabama for this to be considered the Alabama style. Like, you guys maybe were the pioneers of it, but it sounds like you've got plenty of other distillers who are on board with the idea of a little bit of the addition of apple and say, well, this is unique and this is what we're all about. Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a very unique history just because of the law in Alabama that was not allowing distillation. It kind of made it to where no one, I guess, was dumb enough to try to make a whiskey except my uncle Kenny Mayer try to make a legal brand, and which it worked for him. We kind of got ahead of the curve. And what's ironic about all of this is that in 2004. So 3 years into the legal process, but still could not make it legally in Alabama, the state of Alabama passed official legislation naming Clyde May's whiskey the official state spirit of Alabama.
Oh, wow.
Even though we couldn't legally make it there.
Yeah.
And for a long time, Alabama was the only state with an official state spirit. Now Virginia has one as well. But so we're one of two. But it made national news. Like when back in 2004, it was named the official state spirit. The governor at the time, his name was Bob Riley. He vetoed it. He was like, we got way too much stuff going on to be focusing about naming an official state spirit. Well, the people, they actually overrode his veto. And that's only one of a handful of times in the state's history where a governor's veto was overridden to keep it the official state spirit of Alabama.
Don't get between people and their spirits.
That's that helped kind of put us on the map a little bit. Even Saturday Night Live did a little, not a sketch, but in their little news segment they do now, they do it with Colin Jost and those guys, but back then whoever it was doing it, a weekend update or whatever it's called, they made a joke about the official state spirit of Alabama and stuff. So that kind of helped put us on the map for a short period of time. Then it kind of died down. Then we kind of brought it back to life a little bit. But in Alabama, so fun fact, the term Alabama style, while it is a style of whiskey that we created because it's my grandfather's whiskey, it's not like Tennessee whiskey or something like that has a legal definition within the state. Alabama style is actually a term that's trademarked to us. We own that
interesting. Okay.
So that's not to say that people can't make whiskey in Alabama or they can't add a hint of apple. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they can't use the phrase Alabama style. That's something we trademarked.
Interesting.
A long time ago. And most 99.9% of the whiskey and bourbon brands being made in the state of Alabama, we all have a mutual respect for each other. It's just like in Kentucky. There's a gajillion bourbon brands, but there's enough consumers and there's enough people for everybody to be successful. So, we all have a mutual respect for each other. We drink each other's products. We all go to the same bourbon shows or bourbon dinners and hang out and ask how your wife's doing, how your kids doing, and just Southern gentlemen, I guess, is how
Sure.
we treat it.
Yeah.
There's no bad blood there. There might be a brand out there that doesn't love our success or something like that, but everybody's got haters.
Yeah, that's
so
only
I just-
natural. That's
I
only
say
natural
that-
too.
if you have enough faith in what you're making, you don't have to worry about what somebody else is doing. That's how
Agreed.
my grandfather lived his life. So I have faith in what the juice we put in the bottle. So I'm not worried about what other people's putting in their bottle. So.
Sure.
Have the last couple of years been the biggest boom so far? I know a lot of things have happened, SNL and all that stuff. Is it the last couple of years been the biggest?
Oh yeah,
growth?
that was early 2000s. That was kind of the height of our press back then.
Right.
It died down, and for a long time, I mean, for a majority, I shouldn't say a majority anymore. About half of our legal existence, we were so small we could only be found really in Alabama. We were not a national brand, and then. Or maybe you could find us in some neighboring states like Georgia or the Florida Panhandle or something like that. But around 2011, 2012, you can have the best whiskey on planet Earth, but if you don't have the right people behind it, it's not going to get in front of the right people.
Sure.
So it was around then that we got in a new investor group. We got a new CEO, and who has really changed the game, and we have come just night and day long way just in that 10-year span. Essentially, now we're a national brand. We can be found in all 50 states, a handful of countries, 6 or 7 countries now. So we've come a long way. We get a lot of national press, and we've been featured in just a ton of different not just awards or bourbon awards, but commercials and shows, movies, and we've come a long way since the early legal days of 2001, and have come a very, very long way from the legal days of it starting back in 1946.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
like we like to say, available since 1946, legal since 2001.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, you're off to a good start, man. I'm going to classify this as a drinker.
Yeah.
Mine's almost gone. It's absolutely delicious. What's
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. What's the next one up here?
I would say the 92 proof, the one you were going to pour first. Yeah,
Okay.
that one right there.
All right.
So this is like I said, some of the confusion that gets behind our brand is we are known for that Alabama style. So there are some consumers who have gotten confused, and over the years have thought that every product we make has a hint of apple. That's not the case. Only the ones that say Alabama style on the bottle have the hints of apple. What you're tasting now is just a true and blue straight bourbon, 92 proof. It's non-chill filtered. It's also a blend of 4 and 5 year olds. It is a different mash bill than what I was the one earlier that
Sure.
This is the one I was mentioning that is kind of a proprietary blend of ours.
Oh,
We
okay.
actually blend a few different mash bills to create this.
Sure.
This is actually this is 81% corn,
Oh, wow.
15.75% rye, and 3.25% malted barley.
Specifically.
So, yeah, very specific on this one.
That smells great.
In the finished product of something that's non-chill filtered versus chill filtered, what on the nose and the palate are the biggest differences between the two for somebody who honestly does not know?
Well, the beauty of bourbon is, we all have different noses and different palates. So that's kind of an open-ended question. It depends on who you ask. But
Okay.
for me personally, a lot of the most popular natural flavor you get from a charred oak barrel, things like vanilla, caramel, baking spices, things that are really and truly just the oak. Those are the flavors that I think are the components that remain more prominent in a non-chill filtered versus a chill filtered.
Okay.
Whereas a chill filtered, I'm not saying those notes go away, because they most certainly don't, but you're stripping the prominence of them a little bit. You know, the whole point of chill filtration started for color consistency, because, you know, you would get a non-chill filtered product, you would pour it over a big rock, and all of a sudden it would get cloudy or something. And people before now, we're at the point now where enough people know about non-chill filtered where it's not a concern anymore. If anything, it's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you know, people would, because a non-chill filtered, it can come from the same batch, and you can look at the bottles, and sometimes you see little floaties floating around in the bottle, and people are like, you know, they were trying to go back to the liquor store and get a refund and all that stuff.
What's in my bottle?
Exactly. All chill filtration was it was keeping a consistent color, kind of eliminating some of that cloudiness. But a lot of whiskey makers, not just bourbon, but Scotch makers and other whiskey makers, believed that chill filtration, when you freeze it down to that 32 degrees and you're scraping out what kind of floats to the top, you're unintentionally also scraping out some of the natural flavor, some of the lipids and fatty acids, where you're getting some of your natural flavor. So by non-chill filtering it, you're keeping that natural flavor in there.
Nice. Awesome.
Sure.
Good to know.
Yeah, this one is also delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and I get a ton of leather on the nose and oak. I think my favorite part about it though is the finish. The finish is like perfectly sweet, and it's like just the perfect amount of linger to it.
Yeah, it hangs around just enough to kind of make sure it's there, and then yeah. Man, I was getting ready to be like, no, man, this stuff, I don't know about this stuff.
It's so far so good, man.
Hey, it's the liquid to lips factor.
I was gonna say, yeah.
We have a crazy history. We got a hell of a story, you know, and to a certain degree, you know, some people kind of go into it skeptical, and rightfully so. You know, in today's world of bourbon, there's a lot of storytelling out there, and you know, so people have learned to go into trying new things and do it, you know, kind of easing into it a little bit, not diving in head first. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been around the country and people have asked me, hey, how much does this company pay you to pretend to be the grandson of this made up guy?
Wow.
And
that's like borderline insulting. What asshole?
Hey, look, I tell them, I'm like, hey, they must not be paying me enough, because I'm not paying.
I'm still working. Yeah.
I said, I grew up in Southeast Alabama on Rabbit Road. You know, you hear the old adage, I grew up in a town with one stoplight. Where I grew up, there wasn't even a stop sign. You know, you had to go to town to hunt where I grew up. So this is as real as it gets. When you're like Clyde May, and you grow up and you're raised by your grandparents during the Great Depression, then you fight in World War II. He was fought in the U.S. Army. If you're familiar with the movie Hacksaw Ridge, he fought in the same infantry as Desmond Doss, who that movie is based on, the 77th, known as Statue of Liberty Division. Clyde May is a Purple Heart recipient, a Bronze Star recipient.
Oh, wow.
Came home, married my grandmother, had 8 children, raised 8 children in rural Southeast Alabama, always had a full-time job, whether it was logging or farming, and then was also moonshining to provide a more comfortable life. Went to prison for 8 months for making whiskey in the early 1970s. When you have that kind of life, you don't have to make anything up. The stories tell themselves.
I was about to just imagine sitting down.
There's no fake marketing in that, you know.
Right.
He lived a life worth telling. You know, there's no need to make anything up. So
Sure.
That'd be a good day to sit on the porch, just in a rocking chair and tell stories and drink bourbon. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. We've had a couple good stories on here recently. I mean, and I feel like the funny thing is the whiskeys that have the best stories always taste the best too.
It's funny how that works, huh?
Yeah. We had a single malt last week, LC. It was
the Virginia Distilling Company.
Yeah, their Courage and Conviction. Yeah. That stuff was absolutely, and that story too. Just a good history, kind of like, you know, your family's.
Right.
But, you know, this stuff is. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. I am very surprised with how much I like this, and I don't know if you can see behind us. There's about I have 168 bottles. Me and Matt are collectors. So I have about 168 bottles. He's got probably
over 3.
Yeah, over 300.
Yeah.
And Troy is a world traveling sommelier, so he's kind of like our expert. We just spend all the money stupidly,
right? You just fill his glass for him, and
exactly. So he just drinks all our stuff for free, and he makes us sound smart.
Yeah, but this is all. It's such an incredible foray into the world of whiskey that I would have never been a part of otherwise.
Right? No, absolutely. Look, it's. To your point, there's a lot of different brands out there, and to a certain degree, it's oversaturated or has become oversaturated. So, it's kind of like, how do you stick out? How do you rise to the top? Most importantly, you got to do it with the liquid. I tell people all the time, we have a great story. We really do. But none of that matters if, I can talk to you guys till I'm blue in the face, but the liquid's got to do the talking for me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's the best ambassador you got is the liquid inside the bottle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, having said that, when people know the history behind a brand and they know kind of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, and they realize that the May family, we don't live in a mansion up on the hill. Billy May, my dad, who used to make it illegally, still gets up at 4:00 in the morning and logs every day. We're just still, true and blue South Alabama family. Once they understand and hear it, that can go into the tasting as well, because you learn to appreciate it a little more. I think.
Sure. So, it's my point is, we buy all this like, honestly, like I have some expensive, and for lack of better words, shit.
I'm not immune to it. You can see on my Zoom, I got all
right.
But if I dip it down, you can see
there
all
it
my
is.
Zoom.
Yeah, there it is. I was wondering if you drank something else behind your own stuff.
What do you drink? What is your preferred? Do you have a go-to?
Well, obviously, in terms of my preferred go-to, that is the Clyde Mays portfolio. But at the same time, if you want to be a master distiller, not even a master distiller, if you just want to be good at your job, you have to taste other products and be aware of what you like or don't like. You got to be able to speak the language. So a lot of people just assume, not like guys like yourself, but I'm talking, people I meet or even my close friends, they'll be like, yeah, all you drink is Clyde Mays. And I'm like, actually, I don't, I taste other products. That way I can refine my palate and know what I'm doing. But at the same time, having said that, I have a few products I really enjoy and like, but I don't have a consistent necessarily go-to drinker, because if I go to a bar and they do not serve Clyde Mays, or even if they do, but I want to try something else, when I look at the back bar, the product I'm choosing is instantly the one I've never had before. Instantly. I don't have one where it's like, oh, I love the Russell's Reserve 10, which I do, but I've already had it before. So I'm going to try something different. That way I can constantly refine my palate and know what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah, sure.
So,
do you go out and hunt still, or?
Oh yeah, well, that the good thing with being in this industry is the right people.
Yeah, I bet. Lucky you.
I don't have to. My days of camping out in front of the liquor store are long gone. I sleep in my bed. But it's now a lot of the products. I mean, there's very few well-known allocated items you can name that I haven't tasted. I don't necessarily mean that doesn't mean I own a bottle, but I know the right people, and I've been fortunate enough to have a glass poured for me. What I mean?
Sure.
So I've been able to taste, and I know I have some rare stuff in my own collection. I'm not saying that, but at the same time, a lot of times it's stuff that's just given to me. You know what I mean? People just say, hey, you want this or whatever. But I still respect the grind. I know how it is. I respect the people who are out having knockdown doors. And
if you ever get sick of doing this, you let me know, and I'll pretend to be you, just like everyone asks you. I'll pretend to be Clyde May's grandson, and if I can get a couple good bottles out of it, you don't even got to pay me.
Hey, you'd be surprised, man. You go to somebody's house or you go somewhere, and just them being able to drink with the grandson of Clyde May, someone who shares, Clyde May II, and then being able to tell that story. They're like, hey, I don't pour this for anybody else but myself, but have you ever had this before? And they'll pull out an OFC or something,
Oh, wow.
or something just saying, I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. I'm not gonna say no.
Yeah, right.
can't
Yeah,
do
no,
that.
I'm good actually.
I just feel like, I guess,
Yeah, okay.
Love it.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
and it's an interesting thing too, because there's obviously you have like the Wellers and the Blantons and all the Buffalo Trace stuff, and I think people are missing that the stuff right on the shelves is just as good, if not better. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I've spent way too much money and way too much time camping out and trying to find limited releases and allocated stuff. It's almost kind of a shame, because I mean, this stuff tastes better than some of the stuff that I've paid hundreds of dollars for. And I mean, it makes me very excited to see what happens when you start putting your own stuff in bottles.
Oh yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's a big problem that in our industry on both sides of the fence we face is people will go into a store and they're looking for some of those allocated or hard to find items, and they'll walk through the whole store, they don't see it, and they walk out. But in the process of looking for that, they walk past an entire shelf of phenomenal bourbons.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't have the name or recognition yet. That's why I encourage people. Obviously, I want them to try Clyde Mays. I'm always, if I have to pull a bottle off my own shelf here and pour it for somebody, here you go. But at the same time, I encourage people like, hey, if you go in and you're looking for something and you can't find it, instead sit there and try. It can't hurt, because a lot of times if you find that allocated bottle, you're going to pay 2 to 3 times more than you would to try this other bottle. So
Right.
why not try it? And then, if you don't like it, make cocktails with it, or give it to a buddy of yours, or do some horse trading or something like that. Or if you like it, you have something you can rely on now.
Right, exactly.
Has there been something, I don't want to get too off topic, has there been something that's been pretty impressed you a lot? You didn't think you kind of took a shot in the dark and tried recently?
Not necessarily recently. I mean, I've tried some stuff that, not that I wasn't impressed by it, but I didn't necessarily go into it expecting it to be bad. I was pleasantly surprised how good something was. The one instance I can think of, and this has been back in 2017 or 2018. The brand that sticks out to me, and these guys, I'm not plugging these guys. They don't know me.
All right.
Adam, I promise you. I was doing some market work in Arkansas, and I was going in and out of stores. And one of the store owners, he had a single barrel pick of a barrel strength bourbon from a local distillery called Rocktown. And at the time, I don't keep up with what they're doing. Maybe they do 53-gallon barrels now, but at the time they were doing kind of the orphan barrels or the smaller barrels. And I believe it was 18 months old. It maybe was 2 years old. I don't really recall, but it was barrel strength, came out of an orphan barrel out of Arkansas. And he was like, hey, I want you to taste this. And, right away, I'm thinking, there's so many things here that tells me that I probably won't like this, but I'm going to try. I'm always down to try. I'm going to try it. And I was very pleasantly surprised on how much I enjoyed it. And that was very early in my national brand ambassador career. I just graduated college. And that was kind of the moment that it hit me that, hey, there's so many factors at play on how to make a good bourbon. It's more than just the mash bill or it's the mash bill, the yeast strain, the barrel, how much you char it, how much you toast it, how often you rotate it, what floor of the rick house you age it on, just so many your fermentation temperature and length, so many things. And I tasted this and said, I will never in my life go into something expecting the worst like I did with this product going into it, because you just never know. And I went into it and I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought it was delicious. And unfortunately, I haven't even had it since then, because I've seen it in some of the markets around Arkansas, but I don't see it very often. When I do a little bit when I'm out traveling, but it was a Rocktown out of Arkansas. Like I said, just a young, a young single barrel store pick this guy done, and the owner, I knew the owner knew his stuff, and he was like, no, I'm proud of this one. You need to taste it. And I was like, absolutely. And he gave me a little sample cup and poured me out a little sample bottle he had. And I thought it was delicious. I really did. I thought it was fantastic.
Awesome. And stuck with you this
so
many
that
years.
Taught me right then and there. Yeah, I say, it's been a while. They maybe, a lot can happen in that amount of time, but that was a great product. And that also, I tell that story too, because with the same thing you guys are talking about, there may be skeptics about Clyde Mays whiskey, but until you try it, you never know. So go into things with an open mind.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's next?
On that note,
we got the rye.
94 proof. All right.
Okay.
Or do you want to do the 15 first? Want to try that?
Yeah.
We should do rye last.
Yeah, we could do the rye last.
Try 15?
You cool if we try this 15 with you?
Yeah. Fun fact about that 15-year-old. It's a 15-year-old. It's out of Kentucky. We have a non-disclosure agreement with who we got it from. But
sure.
I think your jaws would drop if you heard where it was from. But it's a fantastic product. It was a one and done product. So we did this last year. It was an allocated release. Only a handful or a couple thousand cases, but it was 3 bottle cases. So probably 2,500 to 3,000 bottles for the entire country. Just to give you an idea, you can see, I know your listeners can't necessarily see, but I can move out of the way. You see my back stretch here. Yep. I don't even have a bottle of that.
Oh, man. You want to send you a sample?
We can send you a sample, man. Yeah, we can send you
No, I've consumed it plenty of times.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when I have the opportunity to have a bottle, and I've drank it plenty of times and I know how good it is, to me, I'd rather a consumer have that bottle than me, because I want them to be able to enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. Not that I don't, of course I do, but I want to be able to share the good name of Clyde May. I know how good of a name it is. I don't need to convince myself, So
that's awesome. I literally just saw this. I was at a local store in Indianapolis, and I was looking around. I've seen Clyde Mays,
I was just there about a month ago or two, about a month and a half ago.
Maybe we were there at the same time then. I don't know. But it's about that long ago. And I just saw it in the rare allocated case. I was like, huh. You don't see 15-year stuff very often. And yeah, I mean, I literally just Googled it. The first thing I Googled was Clyde Mays 15, review, what is this stuff? And everyone's trust me, just buy it. You're going to love it. Go for it. And so I haven't even tried it yet. This is the first time I'm cracking the bottle. So I'll be very curious to try this.
Well, shit.
I think you'll love it. If you enjoy the others, I think you'll really enjoy this one. Like I said, not that age equates to quality. I was just the rant I just went on, there's so many factors at play, but this is a very fine bourbon here.
I just took a smell. I literally just felt myself getting a smile in the corner of my mouth.
It is very good.
Huh.
It definitely doesn't taste as hot as it is, which I love.
I'll be damned.
I also
it's 112, right?
Yeah, I also love hot whiskey, so maybe that's just me. But
very nice.
Very nice.
Dang.
Yeah, we produce a lot of barrel strength products, and a lot of people got confused with this. They thought this one was barrel strength, but it's not. It's high proof, but it's not bottled at barrel strength.
Okay.
It's 112 proof, but it did come out a little bit hotter than that. We proofed it down ever so slightly.
Yeah, so we don't really see too much of this around here. I got this is a store pick that I got from a local. This is the 5-year single barrel. I got this from Belmont Beverage here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the only other bottle I've seen until yesterday, I actually saw the Alabama style and I saw the rye yesterday, and I have not seen it besides the 6-year. And I only started seeing it a few months ago, around, unless maybe it just only started catching my eye a few months ago.
6-year. Right. The 6-year is a fairly new release. It's been out and about for about a year now, or a year and a half. It's something that you're starting to see. You'll go into some stores outside of Alabama or in certain markets, and you'll see Clyde Mays, and the only thing they have is that 6-year-old. And the reason is that it's one of our most award-winning bourbons. It won back-to-back double gold at San Francisco World Wine and Spirits, scored really high at the Ultimate Spirits competition. So it's kind of been something that people have started looking for. But Indiana is a market for a while that was kind of quiet for us, but we got some great guys. In fact, one of the state manager actually lives in Indiana, in Northwest Indiana now, and then his boss lives in Chicago. So I was in Indianapolis, like I said, not too long ago, and we'll make sure that we'll continue growing it in Indiana. Without
keep it flowing here in Fort Wayne. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
yeah. No, I'll let my guys know. The guy that lives there, I was actually just on the phone with him about an hour before I jumped on this Zoom. Just coincidentally, obviously, I'm going to call him back and say, hey, you need to, get in the car and get your ass over to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
We'll have him on the podcast.
Yeah. Honestly, I think there's 2 or 3 chains, at least in Fort Wayne, that have multiple stores, liquor stores. The 6 Year is in Cap and Cork, is what the name of that store is. And then where I got the Single Barrel, they have this single barrel and they put it right at the front of the store because they want you to buy their barrel pick, which I get. But then the other stuff is hidden. But so if he wants to, there's definitely an opportunity here in general.
Oh yeah, he's it's the state of Indiana has come a long way. The state's actually doing really well right now, and it's going to continue to do well as we continue to branch out. Because while we are in all 50 states, we still got a lot of growing to do. We're only scratching the surface right now.
Sure. All right, you guys want to try this rye?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it's a thinker drinker.
That's the first thinker drinker I've gotten. The rest are straight sluggers, man. They're crushable.
Very complex.
That is absolutely delicious. You think I would be surprised? I know you have your NDA, but you think I'd be surprised by who makes this?
I think you would.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me say this, a lot of people, when they hear sourcing from Kentucky, they have their handful of distilleries that they assume or kind of immediately jump to. And this is not one of them that you would assume. I'll say
that's cool. Okay.
I like that a bunch. Yeah. Okay.
Right on.
Awesome. Well,
Troy, let's pour it up.
Rye whiskey.
To the rye. What is mash bill on the rye for this one?
It's 95% rye and 5% malted barley on the rye whiskey.
Oh wow,
95.5
and 94 proof. It's a 4-year-old rye whiskey. It's not a blend of 4 and 5. It's just a straight up 4-year-old rye whiskey.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Perfect.
All right.
So Elsie, what's your favorite in your line?
Yeah.
I'm a bit biased even with my own lineup, but in terms of an everyday drinker, I gravitate towards the original, the Alabama style, just because I think it's unique. With the proof at the 85 proof, it's the kind that you can have a couple glasses of and your wife not get pissed at you. But that's kind of if I had to pick one everyday drinker, that would probably be it. But at the same time, it depends on the mood I'm in or what I'm, feeling, because I am into the higher proof bourbons, and obviously that's not a high proof. So I kind of gravitate now. One of my favorites has become the 6-year-old special reserve small batch we were just talking about.
Yep.
The single barrel pick that you were referencing, obviously I haven't had every single barrel pick in the entire country, and they're all a little different, but I try my best when I'm in a market and I meet an account for a first time that bought a single barrel. I try to go home with one of those bottles because I want to be able to, I'll, have a drink every night, 5 nights in a row, and pour the single barrel, but from 5 different picks, and they're all different. And
Yeah.
I like to see, what I get, or maybe what the owner got or the manager got. And, because everybody, when these store picks, everybody's different. Some people pick based on, kind of the averages of what they think the customer would like the most. And then some are like, this is my palate. This is what I like. Here's what I'm picking. So I like to see the differences in some of those single barrel picks.
It is always interesting when people go for like, when they do a pick and they're like, oh, I'm shooting right down the middle, or the weird ones are like, this is the weirdest whiskey I've ever had in my entire life. I have to pick this one. And get it in
Oh
the
yeah,
bottle.
no, it's night and day, man.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, is everybody, that's the beauty of bourbon. That's what, if all bourbon tasted the same, there wouldn't be thousands of different bottles on the shelf across the country. I've had people that will taste a single, but sample through a single barrel, and they'll like all of them, but the one maybe that they liked the least, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to pick this one. And I'll taste somebody else on that same barrel just for, scientific reasons. And they'll be like, oh my God, this is my favorite, done. Sign me up. Everybody's just so different. It's that's what's kind of what makes it interesting, keeps me on my toes, with no doubt.
Sure.
How long into the new, when you start making your own distillate, how long into that are you going to start doing like barrel picks for your stuff?
Honestly, a lot of that's going to have to do with certain questions like that. It's more of wait and see kind of deal, because we have a name and a reputation to uphold. We're not going to rush the process. Clyde May didn't rush the process. We're not going to rush it. But I do think maybe we might venture into some single barrel rye, maybe some younger rye, 2-3-year-old rye. But if I gun to my head answering that question, I would think the youngest single barrel we release once it's in Alabama is going to be about a 4-year-old bourbon. We're not going to really rush that process. Now,
Sure.
like I said, anything could happen that may change. If we feel like we're producing a 2 or 3-year-old and there's an account out there that tastes it and they like it and want to put their name on it, and we think that is to our standard as well, then yeah, we may dive into it. But it's more of a wait and see kind of process.
Sure. Regarding that process, have you guys ever, I'm sure it's come up, but what are your feelings on, as you start, getting your own juice and it's younger, have you thought about maybe, still blending maybe some of your own spirit with the MGP stuff or the source stuff?
We've talked about it. It's a discussion, and it's not something we've ruled out.
Sure.
It's because there's brands right now that have a young distillate that's blending it with MGP distillate, or maybe distillate from another contract distilling company. But ultimately, it kind of goes back to that same thing. If we can do it and feel like it meets our standard, then I think we most certainly will do it, as long as it meets our quality. But if we experiment with it and we don't think it's up to our standard, then it's like, hey, let's wait a little longer and revisit this, or hey, maybe we don't do it at all. But I definitely cannot rule that out. I see that as a real possibility. Maybe doing some blending of some Alabama distillate with some MGP distillate, as long as it meets my grandfather's standard of excellence.
It'd be pretty cool. A lot of people, obviously, like you said, are having a lot of success doing that and blending and stuff, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I got a question about you and your future personally, because I've met my fair share of brand ambassadors. I've had some who are friends, and I've always been pretty envious of their jobs, and I'm sure you have an absolute blast out there. I'm kind of curious as to how much of that you're going to be able to maintain while you end up transitioning to becoming a master distiller. And like, are you kind of abandoning that role entirely, or are you just just curious?
I wouldn't say so. In today's world, due to the bourbon boom we're in the midst of, master distillers kind of have to be brand ambassadors.
Sure.
20 years ago, Jimmy Russell was a master distiller. He wasn't a brand ambassador, but as bourbon picked up steam and Wild Turkey became even more prominent than it already was, you'd see Jimmy Russell sitting at a table at a bourbon event, at Whiskey Fest or whatever, around the country. So to a certain degree, being a master distiller, kind of another hat you have to wear with that is brand ambassador. So I see myself always doing some sort of traveling and ambassador work, but it'll just, my conversation will change, and it'll be, instead of just the grandson, I'll be the grandson and the maker.
It's exciting, man.
Well,
Super exciting for you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, I'm pumped about it. It's something I've been dreaming of for a long time, and it's finally come to fruition. Rome wasn't built in a day, and if you're not going to do something right, don't do it at all. So, it took a while to make sure that we had our ducks in a row and did this the right way, and we certainly are. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
Awesome, dude.
Are you going to be at Whiskey Fest?
Well, I've been before. I don't know if I'll be. The thing about Whiskey Fest is that's the kind of whiskey show where people kind of go into the show knowing what they want to drink, kind of like what we talked about going into the liquor store and they're looking for that stuff and they'll just walk out. There's people who will walk right past tables like ours just because they don't immediately recognize it.
They don't want to engage.
I do a lot. There's a traveling kind of whiskey bourbon event called Whiskey X. They travel all around. They do it in Miami, New York, Chicago, Austin, Houston, LA, Las Vegas, Denver, everywhere in between. And I do that one a lot because that is a show where a lot of the consumers that come in, first off, your demographic, it's everyone from a 22-year-old up to a 72-year-old.
Sure.
It's a pretty wide demographic. And people go in there very open-minded. They want to try something new. They don't want to say, oh, hey, there's the such and such table. I'm going to drink that and two others and get out of here. They're going in saying, hey, I've never had this before and I'm going to try it. And we have a lot of success with that show. And there's big brands at that show. It's not all small brands. It's a prominent whiskey show. And that's one that I normally, in my travels, find myself at a lot of times.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, this rye is also gone. I drank it all. That's kind of my MO. if it's good, it's gone.
I think it's honestly a pretty straight ahead rye.
It is.
There's nothing really to.
I mean, it's not. I was scared it was going to be like have that overly minty bullshit that I know that you hate. I don't necessarily mind it, but
I get a little of it, but it's not.
It's a little, but it's not like overbearing. Whatsoever.
Yeah, rye is a love-hate relationship for a lot of people. I'll do whiskey shows or an in-store tasting, and I have the entire lineup on the table, and they'll come up and they'll say, "Hey, let me try your rye whiskey first," or they'll say, "I want to try everything on your table except your rye whiskey." There's normally no in between, but I feel like our rye whiskey kind of checks a lot of the boxes, even for people who don't like rye whiskeys, they can enjoy this one.
Yeah. It is definitely a bourbon drinker's rye, in my opinion. It's very kind of straight ahead. It's I'd say smooth, but it's very approachable. So I like it more than I thought I would.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have not had a bad
man. I was ready to
We're before you hopped on. It's like, we were gonna try to be tough. It was like, you know what? Let's make sure that we're honest with them, and if it's a stinker, we're gonna call it a stinker.
I'm ready to throw down over Zoom. Come on.
Hey, look. Growing up in South Alabama in the Bible Belt, my mama used to tell me, it's a sin to lie and the truth hurts. So it's. I'm not, I just want people to tell me the truth. If they like it, they like it. And, if they don't, they don't. If everybody liked the same thing, there wouldn't be thousands of bottles on the shelf. And, if everybody liked only one thing, we wouldn't have a lot of different products in our portfolio. We strive to have at least one thing that someone would like, but it pleases me, and I'm thrilled to hear that you guys really enjoy these products. It means a lot.
Absolutely.
I think you're definitely onto something with this Alabama style thing too, because that was my favorite out of the four.
Yeah, hey, look, Clyde May was on to something. He just didn't get it. This isn't like the show Moonshiners where they make it illegally on reality television for a week and then have a legal brand a week later. He was the real deal. He served his time. He never, when he was doing this, his dream was to never create a legal brand. He didn't think that was possible ever. Sure. So That's why people ask me all the time. They're like, "Hey, what would Clyde May think of this brand?" And I tell them straight up, that's the easiest question anybody can ask me. I tell them, if Clyde May were alive, he would still be making whiskey illegally. This brand wouldn't exist. But I think he'd be pleased with where his name and his hard work and efforts gone. The families he's impacted with the jobs he's helped create with this brand, and I think he would be most proud of that. But we've come a long way, still got a long way to go, but it's a wild ride, and I'm here for it to the end. A lot of people, awesome. Even though I'm 27 years old, there's people I know that are like, yeah, when I retire, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And, when I joined this brand, I did it, not for me, but for Clyde May, my grandfather. Everything I do for him. And I tell people all the time that my retirement is a pine box. I'm in it to the end. So, I'm excited about this journey. I'm thrilled to hear you guys enjoy the products, and hey, let's do this again sometime.
Oh yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, when I'm up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we'll do it in person.
That would be amazing.
That sounds good to me.
I'll tell you some fun stories I can't do on
those are the real stories right there.
That would be awesome. And then honestly, when the new place is open down there, maybe we'll come spend a weekend at a cabin.
We've talked about taking a couple trips.
But we're building cabins on site for people to stay in. Now, the thought process of that was for people who come down and do single barrel picks.
Yeah.
But obviously, people don't do single barrel picks year round. So whenever they're not being used, it's going to kind of be like Airbnb style, where if you want to come down and just stay at the distillery and be able to say you slept on site, go for it.
Yeah.
We can bring some bottles. We can have a podcast there.
Do that. I mean, hell, maybe at that point we'll be doing single barrel picks too.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That's on the docket list for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, this has been great. I appreciate you being on here. And honestly, if you are ever in the area, or if there's anything we can do from you,
I'll be back. Trust me, I'll be back.
You got a home cooked meal. You got a home cooked meal and some whiskey if you want it.
Yeah.
So stop on
anytime, man.
Hey, when you come down here, you're welcome here in my home, and we'll crack open a few bottles that I have in my collection as well. So
okay,
I'm excited.
You're welcome anytime. Like I said, I don't take any opportunity I get to talk about my grandfather. I don't take those opportunities lightly. You guys gave me a platform to be able to tell the story of Clyde May, and for that, I'm forever grateful and indebted to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you
for having me on here.
No problem. Anytime, man.
Good luck.
Good luck with everything. Yeah. I mean, you want to place a bet on how quick these 3 bottles will last in my house?
I said these might be gone pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, there's always more where that came from. You know where to find me.
Yeah.
Well, if we could ask one favor. But we do one thing. I don't know if you've heard the very end of our podcast, but we do a thing at the end of our podcast.
We got to put you on the spot.
We might put you on the spot. And we can all do it together if you want this time.
We might have to.
But we do a yodel.
It's a liberating yodel if you're feeling free. But we always make the guest
yodel.
Do it. Yeah.
Have you ever yodel-a-hee-hooed before?
I was saying, is it a yodel-a-hee-hoo or is
a little yodel-a-hee-hoo? Yeah,
but
one
from
of those.
the heart, from the chest.
Yeah. We can all do it on 3 if you want. You might want to.
Pour yourself one last little bit.
A little liquid courage.
A little liquid courage. Hey, but look, I'm down.
I knew you would be.
If I say, you only live once. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So.
Yeah.
Well, then at that, I will. So cheers, and then you want to do a countdown?
Yeah. Ready?
No, let him do it.
I was going to say, is it a countdown? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah. We'll do it together.
We do it together. Yeah.
Okay.
On 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yodel-a-hee.
Yodel-a-hee. Woo!
Yes.